Good morning. If you can hear me, check on the lower part of your screen and make sure that you can click and see the chat feature. If you just kind of hover over the bottom of your screen, you should have a little toolbar that pops up and an icon that says chat. And if you just click on chat, you'll be able to see a little window that pops up for group chat. And then I have a little question there. If you can just type in and let me know what is the top concern or struggle on your mind this morning, that will kick us off here with the presentation. So you should be able to hear me and you should be able to see the presentation slides as well as my video. Another note here, the box that has my video in it, you can click on it and you should be able to drag it and move it around your screen so that it's not in the way of you viewing the presentation. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. I feel very fortunate to be in a position where I can offer some help and support to families, and I appreciate the LaPorte Montessori School for giving me this opportunity to connect with their families and their community. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, but first we'll just kind of jump in here. The presentation today is on how to support your child's learning from home, given the circumstances we're all in, which I know is completely abnormal and feeling very crazy for a lot of us, if not all of us. So just to start with a little bit about me, my name's Megan Trezza, and I am the founder and CEO of La Jolla LearningWorks, which is a one-to-one, I should say primarily one-to-one learning center. We've been around in San Diego for over 11 years now. And my background is in educational therapy. So I started out with a teaching credential and master's degree in elementary education, and then found I had a real passion for helping kids on an individual level. And that's where I connected with educational therapy and went through a certificate program through UC Riverside, about 15 years ago now, and worked with them to learn about the subtleties and the ins and outs of supporting kids one-on-one and being able to really provide them with a highly customized educational experience to, address any challenges that a child's facing and to really prescribe them with the right educational program to appeal to their learning style and connecting with their school and their home and just kind of bringing together a full support system to just help every student really truly reach their fullest potential. And so aside from my professional role, I am also now a parent of a 3-year-old in a dual working household now. So facing a lot of the same struggles that I'm sure you are at home right now too, with juggling work and having children at home without our usual outlets for, getting their energy out and keeping them happy, connecting with friends and all of that sort of thing. So really facing and feeling the same burdens that I know you guys are feeling too right now with this sheltering in place and just a lot of the media and the concern that we all have around the coronavirus situation. So today what I want to talk to you about is how we can really make the most of this situation to try to adjust to a new norm, which I know we hear that buzz term. It's all over social media right now, the new norm. What is the new norm? And I think in reality, we all need to find a new norm, and whether or not, we like the situation, it is what it is. It will be this for a little while. And, we're humans and we're adaptable. And so we will be able to strike a balance and, find a way to make this all work for ourselves and our kids. And so today's presentation is to help you get there. So we'll start with a little introduction, and then I'm going to talk to you about some systems for home learning that hopefully will feel easy enough that you can take them and apply them, maybe after the weekend with a little bit of time to digest and get your kids started next week. Don't mean to overload or overwhelm anyone. Of course, everything is so flexible, and we have to just give a lot of grace with this very trying situation we're all in. But we'll start with some systems for home learning, and then I want to share with you some teaching tips for parents, in supporting your kids in learning at home. So just to kind of get started here, our current reality is that we are functioning as parents, as teachers, in the role of supporting our kids with their schooling, whether or not we have a distance learning program in place. And I know with LaPorte Montessori, there is distance learning happening, but of course, you're there with your kid. And so your role then is to facilitate that learning and oversee them. So you're still playing a role as an educator. And then you're a parent as a full-time caretaker right now without having your resources for childcare, which I know is extremely challenging. And on top of it now, many of us are parents also juggling jobs where we're working from home, and that's not our norm. And so, figuring out the space and the tools and the way to, negotiate work duties with these parenting and teaching duties, just, wanted to emphasize this is so not normal. And any feelings you have of dis-ease with this situation, the anxiety, I know my own sleep has been a little disturbed with just feeling so much stress and, being a little overcharged all day, not really having any pause time that I might be used to. And, now I'm finding that sound of a commute time to drive to work feels like it would be a holiday, just to get a little bit of quiet time. So, this is really not a normal circumstance, and the best we can do to support each other and, put just some simple strategies and tools into place to help with the situation, I know is going to ease a lot of that stress. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about systems and teaching tips. And so to just kind of break this down, the systems, when I talk about systems, what I mean is thinking of a predictable way of doing things or routines that make everything easier to get done. So, if you can make something a routine, that means that you now have a way that you're doing it that you can repeat. And as you have something that you can repeat, everybody gets more comfortable. And you think of like the school day and our kids when they go to school, they enter the classroom, they have certain routines, and that allows a classroom to function very smoothly with having a number of kids and, a limited number of adults that, you might think otherwise could be pretty crazy. And having started out as an elementary school teacher, I taught first grade, and remembering my first year of teaching when I didn't really know how to manage that, it can be quite unruly when you don't have the right systems in place. So I know as a parent, in a new situation of managing kids at home with their learning, I'm sure there's a lot to glean from just putting in place some simple systems. And then on the other side there, thinking of teaching tips. So I pulled together some, just some simple strategies that we use at La Jolla LearningWorks, things that we train our educators on, and, things that we even use in our hiring process as kind of screening questions and, making sure that our educators already have these skills in place, because they're tools that we find just work really well for any child. And, it's about your approach to working with them in a learning setting. So I'll share some of those with you too, knowing that you're functioning in that role as, an educator or support to your child's education. I think this will be really valuable for you. So to get started here, we're going to start with talking about the types of systems. And this is an overview of the systems we're going to cover, starting with behavior expectations. And then we're going to talk about schedules. And I know there's a lot going on social media about schedules, and that might feel a little overwhelming to you. So I just want to assure you that I'm not going to, try and force you into over scheduling things or making it overly complicated. Again, this is just about giving you enough guidance to kind of ease the burden. Then we'll talk about organizing workspace. and redefining screen time. So let's get started with the behavior expectations. Um, Here, this is really what I always think of as the starting point for whether it's the beginning of a school year for a classroom teacher and creating community, or it's one of our instructors working with a new student in a one-on-one setting. The most important thing is to set the groundwork for a harmonious relationship. And with that, kids, just like any other adults, we need to know the rules. And for kids, knowing what's expected of them does a lot for giving them direction for their behavior. Kids don't want to disobey. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to cause, upset in their families or with people that they love. But sometimes we're just not clear in laying down the expectations from the get-go. And so just some simple guidelines for that. So first of all, think about sitting down with your family, and it doesn't matter how young your kids are. I mean, as long as they're old enough to communicate and understand your communication. Thinking of preschoolers, like my own daughter, you can sit down, have a conversation of just, hey, we have this new situation of us all being home together, and we want to make sure that we're all happy and we can all get along, and it's easy on mom and dad, and it allows for kids to have fun too, and this is what it's going to take. And so thinking of just 1 to 3 simple guidelines for younger children, and maybe 3 to 5 for older children. And when I say younger children, that might be elementary through like first grade, and those older children could be anywhere from grades second through middle school, high school age. Just clarifying what your expectations are, and you can frame them in whatever terms make sense for you, and maybe it's based on the rules that you already have in the family, and you're just going to reiterate them. But the important thing would be to just keep them really concise. And it's not a bad idea to write them down. So, if you have a family whiteboard, or you just have a piece of paper that you can write them down on and post it, whether it's taping it to your refrigerator, taping it to, kids' bedroom doors, wherever it makes sense, just to have it as a reminder. And, you can make it colorful, keep it fun. But just as an example of keeping them concise, something like, be respectful, be responsible, and be kind. And those are 3 simple things written in one statement. You could do it as 3 little bullet points. Just keep it really, really straightforward for the kids. Another one I like was my own preschool teacher, who is an amazing woman. She used to say, we don't hurt people on the inside or the outside. So that's simple enough for young kids. And when they're saying things or doing anything that might be disruptive, you can kind of go back to that. We don't hurt people on the inside, and we don't hurt people on the outside. So keep it simple. And then the other important piece of this, and I think that's where we oftentimes get kind of sidetracked and lose the effectiveness of behavior expectations, is forgetting that we really need to explain to kids not only what it means to follow the rule, but also what it means to not follow the rule. To give examples, maybe even to role play, hey, what does it look like, as an example to, be respectful? And what would be an example of not being respectful? So those are important things to talk through, and just know to, revisit it with whatever frequency you feel like you need. In a classroom setting, and for us in our tutoring center, when we're working with new students, we might revisit it at the beginning of every class period, every tutoring session, for the first week or couple weeks or first number of sessions. And then you can kind of phase it out, and you just have it posted, and you refer back to it as a reminder when there needs to be some fine tuning or adjustment of behavior. So I think that's a great place to start. And then next, schedules. So I know I just am talking to a lot of my mom friends with preschoolers and elementary age kids. Everybody felt bombarded with, suggestions about scheduling and routines, and, do this and do that, and, make it this regimented thing, to the point where it felt overwhelming. And a lot of parents have, kind of backed off and felt like, there's too much pressure around the schedule. And so I want to, kind of take a step back from that and just get back to, first of all, the point of having a good schedule is back to that sense of system and routine, and knowing that kids feel more calm and their behavior will be better when they're functioning in um, a way where they know what to expect coming next and they know what to expect during the day. And so with that, just start with what your day was before with school. And I think, back to just, helping my own child with getting on a sleep schedule, how important it was to have regular wake and sleep times. And I feel that too for myself, even just adjusting my sleep time and, working later nights now with having to, figure out how to get work done with having her here all day. It is messing up my sleep and I'm not sleeping as well. So I know for kids, especially, it's really important to have that consistent wake time and bedtime window. So those are kind of the bookends of your day. And then as far as filling it in, it's just about giving a little bit of structure. So starting with the guidelines from the school is a great place, to start with structure and just thinking, what were those routines from the classroom? Were they inside? Were they outside at this morning hour? Did they have free play or structured play at this time? And when did they have, a classroom meeting? When did they have recess and breaks? And, if they're on more of an elementary schedule, when was their PE? So we can work in their exercise too. And then once you have that built into that weekday schedule, then just segment the work time by subject area. And that can be super simple. We'll talk a little bit more around teaching tips of what skills I feel like are super important to hold on to and what we can kind of let go of a little bit. But just thinking, subject area, you're also going to need breaks. So just aiming for 1 to 3 hours of academic work time and really looking at alternating screen time with non-screen time activities. And so I'm sure your school is giving you a lot of ideas. I know they're providing a lot of resources, and we will talk about screen time too, but some of that is going to require, the screen time. And so we also want to think about really scheduling in time for the kids to be doing, whether it's work on paper or it's work with more hands-on or just playing outside. So getting that non-screen time in there too. And also then, if you have work constraints, and also just to think of even the importance of building independence for your kids, that you should also look at that schedule and kind of think, what window is more independent time and what will require more parent supervision. It may or may not need to work into the schedule itself. It may just be something that's really flexible and kind of, you work and adjust each day, but just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And then the other important thing is to make sure this is visual for your kids. So remembering that the whole point of this is to give your kids a sense of ease and knowing that there's some predictable structure and some routine and that they know what's expected of them in the school day. So of course they need to see the schedule too. And I should say, if you do have any questions or comments, again, I'll remind you, you can use that chat window and it will be the little icon on the bottom of your screen that you just click on that says chat, and you can post a question to me as we're going here. So I also wanted to add just some brief tips for the dual working parents. This is like my family. So just thinking what I've done with my husband that's allowed us to have, a little bit more of an adjustment to this new norm is we're sitting down every Sunday and dividing up our work week into windows that are alternating between the two of us being on for childcare with my child, and then being, tucked away to actually get some work done. I'll show you here our schedule. So very rough. We use Google Calendar in my family, both of our businesses, my husband and mine's, we both kind of function through Google Calendar. So I just started with printing out a blank week, and we sat down, took our work calendars out. We also put a high priority on getting our workouts in so that we can have that, that physical exertion to help manage stress, keep ourselves, strong and our immune systems up. So we are alternating workout mornings and getting a little like work window in to just kind of do that first check of email in the morning. And so you can see the blue is when my husband's on duty with my daughter, and the red is when I'm on duty with my daughter. We are fortunate to still have a nice like 2-hour work nap window that gives us some extra work time in the middle of the day. So that's kind of our free and open time. And so, we just kind of divvied up the time. And one thing we were looking at was trying to, kind of alternate longer chunks of time for work so that it wasn't just broken up into short windows, because that can be really disruptive. And just having a short chunk of time to get work done, and you lose so much energy and going back and forth from work to childcare. So we try to limit that in the day as much as possible. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of help. The next system is really thinking about workspace. So when you picture a classroom, when I think of like a really great classroom, and especially with our learning centers too, we always, set up our physical space very neatly and making sure that materials are all well organized, clearly labeled, and accessible, and that we're limiting distractions as much as possible. And that just facilitates students to come in and be in a learning mindset and not have to, be distracted by looking for something that they need, or even just, feeling more organized in their mind because their space is organized. There is something to that. So, think about where it's going to work in your house to have these workspaces. I think if it's possible for you to set up more than one workspace, whether it's having something inside and something outside, or, maybe just something where it's more of a private space versus, a space where you're supervising, just to give the kids a little bit of flexible, movement and variation in where they're doing work will go a long way for them to, extend their focus time too. And then just making sure that you're organizing and labeling supplies for them so that, when we talk about independent work, we'll talk about how important that is to be able to have the materials accessible that they need. So just thinking, I know right now it is tough to get a lot of the basic supplies online and through delivery. Thinking, I know Amazon can be kind of backed up right now, and a lot of the things that I've been looking for have been out of stock. I have found that Target, where they're doing drive up, you can do a drive up pickup where you don't even have to get out of your car and go into the store. And I've also heard that Michael's is doing deliveries for school supplies. So, do your best. Hopefully you have some stuff already in stock, and then just thinking of like making it accessible, whether that's, just simple mason jars that you're using, or, those extra Amazon boxes that you've let, sit for over 24 hours to, get rid of any germs, and then maybe just cutting off the tops and having them, labeled and putting them out there. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just making sure that, every different supply has its own space. And what that also means is that it's going to train your kids to start helping to put things back where they belong. So the thing is that a supply has to have a place where it belongs for a kid to know where to put it back, of course. So, making sure that, construction paper lives in one place and writing paper lives in another. And, if we have pens and pencils that are sharpened, and pencils that are sharpened and pencils that aren't sharpened, they can kind of separate and know where to put things when they need to refresh them for themselves for the next work time. The other piece, though, is about distractions and being at home. I know there's a lot more distractions than being at school because it's not a school setting and we have other things going on in our house. So, we want to think about how you can eliminate unnecessary technology as much as possible. So for those kiddos that might be working in a family room or living room, of course, we want to have TVs off. If those kids have access to iPads or smartphones or anything like that, just making sure that when they don't actually need the technology for their work time, that it's not around their physical space, because even just having it out or having it visible is a distraction. And then aside from that, thinking of ways to help kids focus more. It may be helpful for them to have a little bit of noise that kind of tunes out, other family conversation or other sibling noise or dogs or animals or whatever else might be, a distraction to them. So whether that means a little bit of quiet music playing, or, if you have a sound machine in your house that you can put, just as a barrier between, where you might be, talking on the phone in the kitchen to somebody or doing a work call and where your kid might be working. Another thing you might try is just noise canceling headphones to block out background noise. We often suggest that for kids who tend to be more distractible in a classroom setting, that they even bring in their noise canceling headphones into the classroom. So for independent work time, or especially if they're paying attention to something on the screen, using those headphones can be really helpful for them to just tune in and be more focused to what's happening in their learning setting. So the next one gets its own header here because it is a big one, with sheltering in place, redefining screen time, and knowing that there is a different role for screen time right now. And, we're very fortunate to have screen time in a way right now while we're sheltering at home. So there are ways that we want to take advantage of it. But, also knowing we're parents of young kids. And I know, from the Montessori perspective, there's a lot of premium placed on that hands-on and that real, sensory learning. And, you may be a parent that really disallowed screen time in your family before. And I know a number of my preschool mom friends that, didn't let their kids be on screens at all in the last couple of weeks have caved because they just needed to use the screen, whether it was to get something done or, just to give their kid a little break from, them running around and getting a little cabin fever from being cooped up in the house, or just to connect with family. So let's talk about how we can redefine screen time in a way that will still be healthy and allow us to feel like we still have boundaries around it. So first of all, screen time necessities. So right now there are going to be things that I do think are necessities with the screen time. And, it may vary for you and your family of which of these are necessities or to what degree they are, or maybe, on any given day, one may be a necessity versus the others. But just thinking for distance learning, of course, that means the kids are looking at a screen. Whether it's, utilizing online resources or actually being live with a classroom teacher, they're staring at a screen. And so we do need to be conscious of that and, know that there is, screen time fatigue. That we still should be thinking that kids shouldn't be staring at screens too, close to bedtime or, too late in the day because of that light input and how that can disrupt the melatonin and the biorhythms for sleep cycles. And then, just knowing sitting in one place and looking at a screen, is also a sedentary activity. So we want to, be careful and be mindful of that. But, it is going to be a necessity to some degree or another. And, thinking of the physical space too, if your child is sitting and you have access to an exercise ball, they can be sitting on an exercise ball, or even better yet, if you have a frame for it where it wouldn't be rolling, but it's more of that exercise ball chair that allows your child to engage their core and actually have some fine movement that they're doing while they're sitting. So that may be beneficial for them. Another thing to think about would be putting it on the big TV where they can still be moving around the room while they're talking to their teacher, participating in a classroom meeting or something like that. So any way that they cannot be fully just, rigid in a seat while they're staring at a screen would be optimal. Also thinking about then just the social connection. So one of the big losses right now that we're experiencing is our kids getting that social interaction and developing social skills and, working with others and learning how to negotiate, in a group setting. And so we need to keep them connected with their loved ones and their friends. And, that's where I feel like we really do have a huge advantage in, this amazing technology we have to be able to video conference with family and friends and, set up virtual play dates. So, take advantage of that as much as you can, as much as you feel like it fits your family, values. But, seeing grandparents and, being able to see some friends, whether it's, rolling out some Play-Doh and, both doing Play-Doh together or drawing together, anything like that is, going to give your child a little bit more of a sense of community. And then the last, I put this in quotes, childcare help. I just know this is a reality, and talking to, for myself, I should say, and then talking to a lot of my friends that are working from home with kids at home, young kids at home especially. It is just something you should not give yourself any guilt about, that you may need to use that screen and TV shows to keep your kids occupied while you get work done and, your kids safe in the house. So, we'll talk about the next thing, choosing quality resources, but just know that may be a necessity for you. And we'll also talk about balancing this out with the non-screen time activities. So as a segue here, thinking of high quality online resources to really make screen time count. And, you're going to get some good stuff from your school, I know, especially starting next week. And, that's awesome. But there are some other really fantastic resources that are out there. And I know a lot of parents, like I said, have felt really bombarded with the social media and, so many different things that were popping up as different tools. So we do have a little guide we're putting together with some great resources that I can share with you all after this call. And you can also check our website for our blogs. We're going to be putting out blogs that highlight different resources, especially as new things come up, as well as on our Facebook page. And that's at LJ LearningWorks if you search us, or La Jolla LearningWorks on Facebook. And so thinking of, just ways to take advantage of this time, there are some really great classes that are offered, a lot of them free for kids online to teach new skills. So I know there's a coding program that's out there. The artist and author Mo Willems is doing a daily lunchtime doodles club, teaching kids how to draw, and how cool for them to actually get to spend some screen time with a famous author and maybe somebody that they know from those awesome books of with Gerald and Piggy and the Pigeon. So if they knew those books or love those books now, that might be something fun for them to do. But there's also virtual music lessons, yoga. I just saw yesterday something going through with martial arts classes that they're doing online. So there's a lot that you can be doing, from your home and utilizing technology to access some great resources while your kids can't be out there doing their sports and going to their regular activities. Another thing, though, is there are some cool tours that have been out there. Virtual museum, aquarium, zoo tours. There's a whole site that, again, is part of our resources that we're going to be sharing after this call, of virtual, what do they call it? Virtual field trips. So, just thinking, hey, as long as you're home, your child may as well get a chance to explore, the London Museum or the Louvre, or, see the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and, take advantage of the time to, give them a tour of some places that they wouldn't otherwise get to see. And then lastly, just thinking of enrichment learning online, there are some great resources for, classes and curriculum. The Khan Academy has a lot of stuff going on for free right now for families. OutSchool is a cool site where you pay a really nominal price for some, different kinds of classes that you can select based on age level and grade level. And then, of course, one-on-one tutoring. And that's what this picture is here. This was a photo shared from one of our clients with her kindergartner's son engaged with his tutor online. And so, we are doing virtual tutoring, and I do think it's a high quality resource. It's a live person engaging with your child and, tracking their learning and, basically coming up with activities that are personally tailored for their needs to keep their skills sharp and, address any gaps that may have been there to begin with, or just really provide enrichment for them as they're going through this time of distance learning. And so next, talking about screen time, this is my last point, just to really think about deliberate off-screen activities. And these are things that you could work into your daily schedule. I know we've been trying to just keep my daughter engaged with us in the morning to help make her breakfast so that she's in the kitchen and, whether it's cracking the eggs and mixing them up or, helping to measure things for pancakes or using a spatula to, spread on the peanut butter onto the bread, whatever it is, we're trying to involve her so that she has a little more hands-on time. And, things that you might be able to add into your schedule too, like family reading hour, where you guys may all read together, or if you're working parents, you may use it as work time, but everybody's having quiet time. But also thinking the outdoor time and exercise, again, something you can do as a family or, just work into your schedule. I've heard from a number of families, and I know my husband built us a gardening box last weekend. We're just looking at starting a home garden, and, what better time, at least it's, springtime. So it's a good seasonal time to start gardening. And then, it's also science. So, that was actually the unit that our preschool teacher was going to be doing this month anyhow, was teaching kids about seeds and plants and growing. And so, we're just going to take the opportunity to grow some little seeds, starting them in our house in little pots, and then, planting a garden and seeing what we can grow as far as like real fruits and vegetables that we can harvest and eat at some point too. And then, of course, arts and crafts, science experiments, thinking of maybe substituting family board game nights for where you might have had TV shows in the past. And then also just the quiet playtime, anytime for kids to, I know it's making messes in your house. We have the same thing happening here. But, it's good for kids to get messy and, just engage in their own creative, imaginative play. So I think that's important to work into the schedule too. So that kind of wraps up our strategies. And now we're going to talk about, for the last 20 minutes here, just some teaching tips for parents. And so these, like I said, are, strategies that we use at La Jolla LearningWorks in our one-on-one sessions, and, things that we, find to be very fundamental as ways to engage kids in learning and help them stay focused and motivated, and really also work through challenges. So we're going to start with fostering independent learning, and then talk about some strategies to make learning come naturally. Next, we're going to just focus on mistakes as learning moments, and we'll go from that to avoiding meltdowns. And last, we'll end on the high note of how to use praise to motivate your child. So to kick it off, fostering independent learning. And I know this is something very fundamental in the Montessori approach, thinking that, kids are, they're set up in a Montessori classroom to be able to do a lot of activities on their own, to pace themselves, to have a lot of choice. And, that means that teachers do quite a lot of work in setting up those classrooms, and getting lots of materials, which you may not have access to right now. And so it'll take a little bit of creativity, and I'll give you just some simple guidelines for how you can start to foster that more independent learning environment. So first of all, with an independent work environment, think about materials. I know we talked about that as far as organizing space, but thinking about, the specific day and whatever kind of lesson plan the teacher's given you, to review that in advance and help to prepare the materials so that your child can actually have some independent work time. So whatever that they're going to need, whether they're going to be working with that material, on their own, or whether it's something you need to help prepare them in advance, just make sure they have what they need before they get started working. Another thing would be then thinking of a visual schedule. And that is really just taking that schedule we talked about at the beginning and what you've made, concrete for them, and posting it and making it something that is visible for them. And whether that's like the full day schedule, or it's just a chunk of that work time for them, and you can put it on paper, you can use a whiteboard, whatever it is. Let your child be in charge of checking it off as they finish. And with that, include the break time. They shouldn't be just like sitting for an hour or longer. It should be, 15 to 20-minute intervals between activities, and, having, a break, say every 30 minutes, where at least they're just getting up to stretch and get a drink of water and use the bathroom, that sort of thing. And then lastly, a timer can be super helpful for this too. And thinking there's some really great tools as timers for visuals for kids. I'll show you this one here. This is called the time timer. We have this little one in our office here, and we have a big one for my daughter. And it just, it's a visual for kids. So they don't have to, worry about reading a clock or reading, even a digital timer, but it's a really good way of giving them an idea of how much an amount of time means by this visual illustration. And so the time, as it elapses, this red, piece will just kind of tick away here. And then, you come to the end and it'll give them a beep. And so they can just look up and glance and see how much time they have left. And it'll help them too to start learning, more about those units of time, and thinking of the 5-minute increments and what does that mean to have 5 minutes versus 15 minutes. And, can be a good segue into fractions too, and talking to them about portions of hours and that sort of thing. So the time timer is an awesome tool. You can order those on Amazon. You may be surprised at the cost, but I assure you that it is worth it. And then the next piece of this is the communication you have with your child about independent work, and kind of going back to that idea of behavior expectations, just setting clear expectations for independent work. So with that, some things that may be helpful for you would be just to, we call it chunking assignments, but just making it really clear what portion of the work you're expecting your child to complete on their own before you're going to check back in with them. and, making it really clear, whether it's using Post-it notes to note it, or, boxing things off with a highlighter, just laying things out on the table for them so they can see what's expected of them to complete in a given work time. And then just making sure they're really clear on instructions. So because you're facilitating their learning, that's your role, is helping to explain instructions. And so, if you're leaving them to do something independently, you want to make sure that, they can tell you back what's expected of them in their own words, and that they're really clear on how to do what they're supposed to do before you step away. And then lastly, I have this as prevent perfectionism, and I kind of went back and forth on calling it prevent perfectionism or prevent interruptions. And so thinking, if you're using this time while they're being independent to get other things done, you don't want to be interrupted constantly with them, getting stuck or needing help. And I think that that really does, though, feed off of that tendency of, perfectionism. But we need to let our kids know it's okay to make mistakes. We're going to learn through mistakes. You want to see their mistakes, first of all, and then help them later and give them a chance to, figure out how to work through it so that they can learn something new. So I think a good message is just try your best, and I'll help you with anything you're stuck on when you're done working by yourself. So, whether that means that they're going to circle something that they're fully stuck on, and, you guys will do it together, or they try it and then, they can put a little X next to it if they want you to come back and, help them with it because they're not sure. Or if it just means that they're going to, circle something or highlight something, whatever it means, just letting them know that it's okay to get stuck, but they should just keep working. They shouldn't let that stall them out and break up this independent work window. So next, talking about how to make learning come naturally. And with this, I want to also emphasize the difference between skills and content. And so when we talk about, standards for learning, there's a lot of content standards for learning and things we want kids to be learning, whether it's, social studies or science, or, just different content knowledge that we want them to be picking up. And that I like to kind of distinguish from the hard skills that we need to be developing in our children so that they can progress through different grade levels successfully. And when I think of those core skills, this is really what we focus on at La Jolla LearningWorks with our students in our educational therapy, is those core skills and helping kids with any roadblocks they face to acquiring these. And you can find so many great ways to just make learning come naturally in these areas. So with reading, I mean, if a child is interested in what they're reading about, they want to read it, right? So, if they get to read and learn about, snakes because they're really interested in snakes, or, making a paper airplane because that's what they want to be doing in their free play time, they are going to be intrinsically motivated to do that reading. So just think of that, or, if it's their favorite chapter book, let them read that favorite chapter book. The important things with reading is just to, expose them to new vocabulary words, to get them practicing and building their fluency. And so anything that you're using as material for that is going to be great. Around writing, it's kind of similar, thinking that, no matter what the content is that they're writing and they're practicing spelling, they're practicing letter formation, they're practicing sentence structure, and, they're experimenting with new words and how to order them. And, that can be, writing letters to friends, just making lists of places they want to visit when sheltering is over, or writing silly stories, whatever it is that's going to, make them feel excited about putting the pencil to the paper is absolutely fine. And then lastly, with math. And so, math can be a little bit more challenging with the exercises because you might need more concrete tools, but you don't have to go crazy with it. And this could be something, where your child may be motivated around, wanting something in particular. And you can teach them about coins and play with the coins and start counting them and adding them up to see how much something costs. And, what's the price on Amazon for that new toy you want? And let's play around with it, and let's see how many different combinations of different coins we can make that would, come up with that amount. Or when you're explaining concepts for a kid, just to relate it to an activity or an interest that they already have, whether that's sports or, something else in the world, cooking, or, toys, again, whatever it is that you can relate it to, that is going to make that learning experience be intrinsically motivating to your child. Also, so thinking of mistakes as learning moments, this is something we spend a lot of time training our educational coaches on at La Jolla LearningWorks, because we feel, and I think it's just absolutely true, that learning happens in those moments of mistake. And it's about facing a challenge that you're growing, right? So if you're fearful about that challenge, or, you just become overloaded, you can't really get through it. So the first thing as an educator or parent supporting a child at home is just to stay calm and be patient. I know I've had parents comment as they're listening in on our instructors of, wow, you guys are so patient. I don't know how you do that. And it's definitely harder when it's your own kid. I know that from my own experience, but, just do your best and take a deep breath and, really let your child finish an exercise before calling an error out. So there's nothing that makes a child feel more anxious than having a parent sit next to them and keep pointing out, oh no, that's wrong, or try that again. Oh wait, what are you doing? So let them finish the exercises and then go through it together. And then as you go through it together, I have here encourage self-correction. And what that means is you want your child to have the opportunity to make the correction on their own before you jump in and show it to them. So draw attention to the error, but don't show them immediately how to fix it. Let them do another try. So you might say, hey, let's look at this one again. You want to check that over and just, make sure that that's the answer that you want. And, something like that, that's, pretty neutral. Or, if your child gives you any pushback, you could let them know, hey, there's something wrong with this problem. But I bet you could figure it out on your own. I'm going to let you try and be the detective to figure that one out. So just setting it up so that they feel like it's a little bit gamified and they're up for this fun challenge. Then lastly here, instill a not yet mentality. And this comes from the growth mindset research. We want our kids to understand that learning is a process where they're going to experience struggles and, they're going to make mistakes. And so, when they have mistakes, just making sure that the communication you have with them is very positive and, no, that's okay. We don't know how to do this yet. Let's figure it out together, or it may take a little bit more practice. You might not get this right away, but just like everything, after some practice, you're going to get better at it. So just reinforce that mindset of not yet, but we are working towards it. Now, this is about the avoidance of meltdowns, and I have it press pause. And I think that's just something important to remember. We can't just push through a moment of frustration. Children get to these points sometimes just because they're tired or overloaded. And it may not be about that concept being above their level, or it may be about that concept being about their level. But either way, I know oftentimes, as an educator and as a parent, I hit that point where, I find myself feeling frustrated because I just want the child to get it. And I think, well, why can't you get it? Or let's keep trying. We got to keep trying until you get it. And I know that's where I need to check myself. And, we need to step back and go, okay, hey, this is getting too hard. Like, let's just shake it out. Let's do a silly dance. Let's get away from this. Let's come back to it later, because this is a not yet moment and we will get it, but we're not going to get it when we're all hyped up and feeling frustrated. So take a break. Return to the challenge later with refreshed energy, maybe thinking about how to present it in a different way to the child. So that is the press pause to avoid meltdowns. And lastly, on the teaching tips, praise to motivate. So I learned this as a classroom teacher, and the power of positive feedback is amazing. Emphasizing what a child is doing right versus noting what they're doing wrong is going to go just so far in so many ways, whether it's, around learning or just any kind of behavior that you're trying to reinforce or dissuade a child from doing in your house. Noting where there are those incremental improvements or demonstrations of things that you do want to see. So, making sure you're always on the lookout for good things. I know that's really hard. It's hard, as a parent, it's hard as a teacher, it's hard as a boss, to be always looking for the good things to praise. But, the more that you can do that, the more that you're reinforcing that good stuff that you want to see. And so thinking about how to do that, you want to be very specific in your praise. And so, comment on particular improvements that you notice in both the behavior or the effort and the specific skills. And so it's not just good job or great, oh, that was good, but being, clear, like, I noticed you took your time to show each step in that math problem as you worked out the solution. Good job. I'm so proud of your attention to detail. So now they know that this good job is about something very particular that they did, and they know now that they should be repeating that same thing over again. So this is just now our conclusion. And I know in this trying time, we're all facing different challenges, many of them shared, and we're just not alone in, feeling overloaded or just feeling exhausted. The bottom line, though, is you can't give from an empty cup. So, keeping your cup full, and I know I touched on this when we looked at the schedule that my husband and I share with, having time for exercise in the mornings. And we do try and take time for all of these things as well as we can. But just knowing, that exercise, it boosts immunity, it relieves stress. And there's a lot of great online resources right now for classes you can take. I know my Pilates studio is doing virtual classes I just tried this week, and it was fantastic, just tucking away in my bedroom for a little while while my husband had my daughter. And then even just doing, exercise together with your kids. My husband's been taking my daughter out on bike rides together in the mornings while I'm getting work time in. And, I know families that are just going out for daily walks. So all of that is super important, and we can do it alone or we can do it with our kids. But also thinking of sleep. And I know I've talked to a number of parents who are, barely sleeping right now. And I know it's hard to say don't do that when you feel like you just have to get work done at some point. But, the best that you can do to regulate your sleep, and, that's going to give you more energy, and also just, again, bolster your immune system so that you can stay healthy and be able to focus during the day. And lastly, mindfulness. We do talk a lot about mindfulness with our students at La Jolla LearningWorks, because these practices help kids, in working through challenges and working through stressful situations. If you do it on the regular, especially, it can then help you when you face a challenge. It's not super effective to just jump into a mindfulness practice in a moment of frustration or a moment of anger. It really has to be part of your routine to then be able to use it effectively when you really need it. So thinking, just 6 deep breaths can be amazing, and it only takes a few seconds. If you can do that, before you leave the bathroom in the morning and you get, bombarded with your kids, or, before you leave your bedroom, or whenever you can get a little break time in there, go out to your car and sit in your car in the garage or the driveway, whatever it is, just to give yourself a little reprieve. And then, if you do have a little bit more of a break, doing a 10 to 20 minute meditation, and there's lots of great guided meditations out there from different apps and just on YouTube. It really does a lot to regulate our stress and our emotions. So focus on keeping your cup full as best as you can, and know that you're not alone. And if you do need help, La Jolla LearningWorks has a lot of great resources and services available. We offer assessments, and we're doing those virtually now for students. And so that may be helpful to just give you some guidance on how to support your kid at home. It's also for us an ideal, first step to getting into a personalized tutoring program, which we're now doing virtually. And so, if you start with an assessment, we can then, really pinpoint specific academic skills to be working with your child on. And then also knowing, kind of what their learning style is, from that level of working with them on the assessment can help us then, prescribe specific strategies that'll be useful for them in that one-on-one tutoring setting. And so, for the virtual tutoring, we're going to be releasing some discounted packages next week for daily sessions, Monday through Friday. And we offer the live one-on-one sessions for homeschool support. We've always done that, actually, in our center. We have students that come to us for homeschool support. Now it's just online. And our educational therapy is now online too, and that's really offering more of that remedial support for those fundamental skills in the reading, writing, math, and thinking of kiddos who have specific learning challenges, or ADHD or something, that's a diagnosed learning disability, or just some gaps where they need extra support. And then lastly, enrichment. If you're just feeling like your child needs a little bit extra academic structure than what you're able to provide in the home right now, we can definitely help. We have tons of resources to help with that. And lastly, but I think one of the really awesome tools that we can offer you is we are doing some free weekly classes for students in grades K through 8 every Wednesday. So you can check our website and sign up for those under our events. We have a K-2 Reading Rockstars group, and then grades 3 through 5 Reading Rockstars, and a literacy leaders lesson that we're doing for students in grades 6 through 8. So each of those happens every Wednesday, and those are free while we're in this sheltering in place, just our way of giving back to the community and really trying to help kids, stay engaged in learning and have something fun to do while we can hopefully give parents a little bit of a break. So if you want to connect with us, you can find us online. Our website is ljlearningworks.com, and we're still working remotely, and you can contact us via phone as well, 858-456-4569. And I just thank you so much for joining us today and participating in this webinar, and I hope that it gave you some good tools. Like anything, don't feel like you need to, implement everything. Whenever I give a presentation, I always just ask my audience to try and take, 1 or 2 great takeaways and put them into action. So whatever stood out to you as helpful, please, go ahead and use it. And we will be sending out a recording of this. So if you had to bounce off, or you were only able to join for a part-time, or you want to dive in and check something out again, you'll have access to that. We'll be emailing it out to you after this talk. So thanks again for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, restful and relaxing weekend, and just wish you all the best of luck with this homeschooling period of time, and stay healthy and safe. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.